All right, let's move on to the next step in designing a histogram, and that's calculating the range. If we come back over to the MyOpenMath problem, here's the end of part two. Here's part three in this MyOpenMath problem, and that's calculating the range. All right, so calculating the range, let me take a look here at our worksheet. Okay, so step two, let's go back up to the flow chart, just kind of show you where we are in this process. So step zero was to kind of get our random variable information together. Step one, which is what we just did, and that's to determine a starting point. Step two is to calculate the range. Now the range is going to be the maximum datum minus your starting point. So the starting point that you just figured out in the previous step. And the range is going to be used later in step three. Okay. So we'll use the range to calculate the width of each class with both histograms. Yeah. So this is the formula for range. So it's the maximum minus the starting point. So let's go back to the spreadsheet software. All right, Microsoft Excel. And let's type in here the range is equal to maximum minus starting point. Now, let me show you a little trick here. So you'll notice that when I started typing in this cell, right, the edge of the cell is here, but I could put in more text than the width of the cell could accommodate, and it kind of bleeds over to the next cell. So one of the things you can do is you can easily resize the width of these columns. And so how to do that, you can do it manually and automatically. Let me show you how to do it manually first. So notice the cursor is this, big, wide um, cross. And if I move the cursor up to the column headings, it now changes from a big white one to kind of like a solid, thin black cross with left and right arrows. And if I move it to the left and to the right, that goes away. So when it's this cursor, that means you're on the line between those two columns. And if I left click and hold the left mouse button, and then I drag to the right, I can drag it to change the width of column C to be big enough to accommodate all of that text without bleeding over to the next one. Okay. And I can make that however big I want, like that. Now, another way to do it automatically is that instead of left click and holding, if you double click it, it'll just automatically resize it to the longest text in the whole column. Okay. All right. So we have the maximum minus the starting point. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a formula for this. So notice that I've got my maximum value here, and I have my starting point here. All right, and granted, in this example, 149.1 minus 0 is going to be 149.1. We don't need a calculator for that, right? But I'm going to use this as a teachable moment, again, to show you how to program spreadsheet software. So we want to perform a calculation, so I want to start that with an equal sign. And then I want to take the maximum value and then subtract the starting point. So notice that the first cell that I clicked, it highlighted it in blue, and that was cell D5. And so it put D5 here, minus D7, which was the second cell that I clicked, and that's in red, and the text is in red. Notice that you can see that formula up here in the formula bar, it's just not colored. And then, as I've said numerous times, you always got to start it with an equal sign if you want the spreadsheet software to treat it as a calculation or a function. And now at this point, we can hit enter or hit this green check mark. And now it does that calculation of this cell minus that one. Now, what's helpful here is that let's say I just change my mind. You know what? I changed my mind. I don't want to use 0 as a starting point. Um, I would have to redo the MyOpenMath problem, but let's just say for the sake of argument, we weren't doing MyOpenMath. You're doing this in your job, and you're like, I don't want 0 as a starting point. I want it to be 4 instead. Now, look what happens to this cell below it when I calculate the range, when I change this to a 4. You see, it automatically recognized there was a change and did this minus that to give us 145.1. And now if I change it back to 0, watch this change again. See? So that's what makes using spreadsheet software important, not only for businesses, it also is important for students when you're having to calculate things in your other classes, let alone make graphs. In that you can program each cell to be a formula, and that formula is based on the values of other cells. So if you change any of the other previous cells, everything else will change accordingly, and you won't have to go back and like redo all the calculations by hand. Okay, that's a really powerful thing to be able to do. All right, so we have a range. I have a range of 149.1. So I'm just going to update my worksheet to show a range of 149.1, like that. And then I'm going to go into the MyOpenMath problem. And here, question 4, I'm going to put 149.1. And again, it wants one place of accuracy. Yours will be different. Okay, just pay attention to that. Pay attention to what it's asking for. And then hit submit. And if it's the correct answer, it'll say so. And again, it's calculating the range with the same idea. It's using the maximum from your data set and this starting point that you put in. That's how it's getting this number. All right. Okay, so now it's going to be time to move on to part 4. So this will be a good time to stop this video since we just finished calculating the range. Let me go back to the spreadsheet and let me go ahead and put in sample size. I'll put n equals, and I'm just going to type in 241 like that. Okay, so I think this is a good stopping point. Let me go back to the MyOpenMath problem. All right, so we'll pick up the next video here on part 4. Let me know if you have any questions.